Good afternoon, everyone. I am Carla Sanders, the Cosmic Crone, and I am bringing you the Divine Feminine Astrology reading for the new moon, which is August 8th, 8/8/21, the Lionsgate new moon. So the new moon is happening on August 8th at 9:50 a.m. Eastern Time, where I live. And wow, it just doesn't get any better. Every reading, every new moon portal builds on the last one ever since the eclipse season. So what we have are the sun and moon conjunct at 1614 Leo. And this is a little over 24 hours after the exact cross-quarter moment, halfway between the solstice and the northern equinox. So this is the Lammas season. So we've got Lammas, Lunasa is my preferred name for it. That is the first harvest. That is the time, it's a time of celebration and play, and honoring the goddess who feeds us is the simplest way of putting it, acknowledging it, that we work in collaboration and co-creation with the earth, with divine, in order to have our sustenance. So that's Lunasa. Then we have new moon and Lionsgate. Now, Lionsgate 8/8, it's in Leo. It has to do with the star Sirius conjunct the sun. And I'm going to admit right here that I have not paid a lot of attention to Lionsgate in the past, and I am not your primary resource for it. But what I am doing, since it coincides with the new moon, I am acknowledging the energy. And I'm going to be describing the planetary energy that is swirling around us as we step through the Lionsgate. And I encourage you, if you are interested or curious, to find a resource. There's plenty of people on Facebook. I'm going to some kind of attunement on Sunday. And so I will be learning more about it myself. Just acknowledge that we are in a heightened vibration of higher, faster moving energy. And our bodies and spirits and energy field needs to come up to speed. Now, a couple of weeks ago, we honored the shift of Black Moon Lilith and Vesta from earth signs into air. And I did an attunement ritual that some of you may have participated in. And that is still good. It's still valid. You can ask me how you can get your hands on that. That will help you bring your energy up to meet the Lionsgate, the new moon, and the shift into air for these two divine feminine avatars who have a lot to offer us right now. So what is going on in this chart? Well, there's a whole lot going on. This chart is overwhelmingly fire and air. There is let's take a look. Pretty much there is there's so many lines. Look at all these lines. I'm having to study them for a minute to sort out which ones are which. But the first thing, the sun and moon in Leo, those two luminaries, along with Mercury, that's really hot right there. And they are in a trine with, I cannot tell which one is going where. There is a trine to Chiron. Okay, great. Close enough. It's kind of a wide trine orb connecting the energy to Chiron in Aries and then over to the great attractor in Sagittarius. The great attractor is the deep void of the feminine. It is the darkness from which all things come and is calling all things back. It is an extraordinary metaphor for the divine feminine and for the divine itself in all of its expressions. So, and it's in fire sign Sagittarius. So we have new moon, great attractor, Chiron. That's one fire trine. And then there is another one. There is it's not a fire trine, but there is a Mercury. Mercury, which is in Leo, is in a trine formation to Eris. And Eris is the goddess of discord and chaos. And Mercury is the one who carries the messages. And he also is about electronics, money, speed, communication in all realms, moving energy that moves between. And it can happen in a nanosecond, like electricity, like fiber optic cable, like quarks and neutrinos, subatomic particles that are always passing through us all the time. Or it can be picking up a quill pen and doing calligraphy on a piece of paper and putting the message in the bottle and sending it out. So all forms of communication with Mercury, but typically we associate him with speed because speed, communication tends to work fast. The word, speaking the word, brings things into form immediately. And so Mercury is that mediator. Eris is square Pluto, which she has been for years and will continue to be for the next year or two. This is two very slow-moving planets who have been just moving together through their respective signs, Pluto in Capricorn and Eris in Aries. Eris is chaos, discord, disturbance. We don't really like her energy because it brings change and it makes us very uncomfortable. And if we are super invested in the status quo, whether it's in our own minds or our social structure, Eris gives us the willies. And Pluto does too, because death and transformation. What no longer works must die, so that what is new and will work can be born. This is the natural order of things. I've started watching this movie on Netflix, Fantastic Fungi. And fungi, they're like mercurial in energy because they are connecting all life on the surface and below the surface of the earth. Even the air, because they send spores, seeds out through the air, and they send their communication system out through their bodies, really. The fruiting body is a mushroom, but their real body is moving through soil and rock and the roots of plants. So fungi are incredibly mercurial, and they rot things. They cause decomposition. What has died becomes nutrients, and it returns to the soil from which new life will grow. So we've got Mercury and Pluto in the energy of fungi, and we have Eris, chaos, in that energy too. So if you feel motivated to understand this a little more in a very concrete kind of metaphor, if you've got a hold of Netflix, watch that movie and think about it in terms of what's been going on for a while and what is really intense right now at the Lion's Gate and the new moon. So there is another trine. Let's see. Well, we've got a T-square. The T-square is air. earth, and fire. And that is Magdalena, feminine Christ consciousness, the great feminine teacher of our modern era, is opposite. She's in an exact opposition to Eris, chaos, and they are both square Pluto. So, and that's fascinating because it gives a divine resonance. It gives a gravitas to this energy. It's not just what's breaking down. It is breaking down and creating with intention of bringing in a higher vibration. Mary Magdalene represents a new order in the same way that Jesus or Christ represented a new order. What happened with his teachings and his existence, or the story of his life, the myth of Jesus, however you choose to see it, is not the same as what was intended through the origin. What was intended is that the old structure would change and something new would be born. And yet what was ultimately created out of the patriarchy was a toxic patriarchal structure that we now associate with the Bible and with Jesus' teachings. And that is a lie and a fallacy. So Mary Magdalene represents the purity, that word is so loaded, the high vibrational essence of those teachings and the shift in consciousness. The story of Jesus is about a new consciousness. The story of Mary Magdalene, which was repressed by Christendom, was for a new consciousness. So with Mary Magdalene opposite in part of this T-square at the time of this new moon, and that's kind of a long-lived. She has been retrograding and she has just recently turned direct again. So she's going to move out of the square fairly quickly. She's an asteroid, and they're not super fast, but they're not as slow as Eris and Pluto. But for now, for the Lion's Gate, Mary Magdalene is a very strong influence on the energy that we've got here. Another very strong energy is there is another grand trine that is in air. So we have fire. Well, what happens to fire when you blow air on it? The fire gets bigger. If you're having a fire situation, a wildfire or a campfire, you don't want a lot of dry, hot wind. And we have dry, hot wind in this chart. It starts in Libra. Vesta is rising in this chart, at least where I live. So Vesta always gets my attention. So if she's rising in this chart, where I live, she's got a message for me. And she is connected to Psyche in Leo. Psyche is, she is an aspect of the feminine wound as the seed of initiation. Now you may be thinking, what in the world are you talking about? Well, Psyche went on a women's initiation journey where she was, she met her wounds. Her wound was that she couldn't get anything right, and people were always telling her what to do. She was a pawn, and the men in her world used her, and the women, her so-called friends, her sisters, they all used her, and the goddess Venus hated her. And the way her story transpires is she's just in this very dark place, and she screws everything up because she does not trust herself. But what happens is she goes on an initiation journey and learns to trust herself and becomes equal to the goddess, or at least part of the goddess's household. The divine aspects of herself awaken. Her mature feminine is embodied goddess, which is who we are, women. Don't forget that. So, Psyche, Vesta, and Juno are all in a close connection. Psyche, Juno are trine. Psyche and Juno are both in fire, and Vesta is in air. Vesta is the priestess. Vesta's a fire goddess. She tends to the altar and the sacred flame inside of each one of us. She holds that divine energy and keeps it going. And in Libra, she's blowing on the fire, and she is facilitating the dance of balance. And I always refer to it as dance because balance is not static. Balance is dynamic. It is a conversation, it is a dance, it is an exchange of energy. And if one thing gets out of balance, then that exchange of energy breaks. The conversation is over. And Vesta in Libra is tending to that balance, and that is something that is within us, and it is something that we are working with in our culture, in our personal, intimate relationships, and in our experience of life. Whether we're working with time or money or energy, decision making, we're always balancing the pros and the cons, the realm of possibility. It goes everywhere. Vesta holds the center. She holds that flame on the altar and says, the place to make your decisions, the place to step into and out of the dance is the center. Stay in the room, stay at the altar, stay at your center. So as all of this energy through the planets, through the new moon, through the Lion's Gate, through the chaos, as it's swirling, Vesta says, I've got you. Hold your center. Tune into me. And then in Gemini, also an air sign, Vesta is connected to the North Node, which is destiny. And it is where we're headed. It is the outcome we're seeking. It's what is drawing us forward through our lives. And so that's working for the collective. It works for all of us individually. And then they are connected with Saturn. Saturn, I love this. I'm just now seeing it in a new way. As I have studied Saturn over the past few years, ever since my second Saturn return, but it definitely is Saturn. We worked up to the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction last winter solstice. And now Saturn is in air, and Saturn is connected to opposite Psyche, and part of the Grand Air Trine between the North Node and Vesta. So Vesta is the priestess. Saturn is a container. Saturn creates structure. And we can look at that as rules, as laws, as form. Well, nothing exists without form. We have life on earth because we have bodies, we have form, we have laws of nature, we have universal law, and we have taken that energy to create moral law, ethical law, and civil law. And then we have the law of our relationships. Who says they're in charge? Who's laying down the rules? Whose wishes are acknowledged and whose desires are ignored? We have a lot of... We lean into Saturn because otherwise the chaos is too terrifying. but we resist Saturn with everything we've got. We feel like Saturn opposes our liberty and our freedom, and Saturn has been invoked to crush people, for sure, misused. But what I've learned is that just like art has form and composition, just like a pot has, I don't know if any of you have ever made pottery, but if you're pulling a pot, you have the expanding energy on the inside pushing out and the compressing energy on the outside pushing in. One of the first astrology readings I ever had, the astrologer said, Jupiter is expanding and pushing out, Saturn is pushing in, and together they make the pot. They make the cauldron, the crucible. So you could imagine that they are making the container for the fire on the altar. They are like the womb, which expands with new life and then contracts when that life is born, and then repeats the process. And Saturn in ceremony, if you've ever done a ritual or ceremony, and especially if you've ever created it for yourself, you know there's a form. You call in energies, usually related to directions or elements, and you create a circle, you cast a circle. You have certain things that you do in a certain order that lets the energies know you're calling them. You set your intention. You hold out things that don't belong with your prayers and incantations. You declare what is going to happen. And it can be incredibly elaborate or it can be extremely simple. But Saturn holds the form in which the energy of the ceremony can work. The magic, a spell, if you're doing witchcraft or magic, has form. So Saturn with Vesta and the North Node are creating a form. The North Node represents what is it we're wanting to create. Let us align with the intention. And the intention is heavily influenced by the new moon and the Lion's Gate, which are coinciding right here, right now. So use that this weekend. Give yourself some time, even if it's just very simple. Light a candle, call in the elements, call in the directions, call in your ancestors, your angels, however you do it, and just sit and say, I am creating. Help me to create. I command the energies here. And then, of course, you will get your instructions, and then you have to do it. Or not, but there's a price to pay if you don't. So I always like to give you a little something that you can do, an action step, and that's your action step for the day. So there's a couple of other energies that are active, and I'm going to name them because we've talked about Vesta, and now our beloved Lilith, who has moved into air and will be in air for 9 months. Lilith is trine Chariklo, also in air. They are both, okay, first of all, Lilith is in an exact conjunction to Ceres. Lilith is amazing. She has so many faces and aspects. The ancient Sumerians saw her as a goddess of air. The owl was her being, her totem animal. And so she moves silently through the night, through the air, with all that is fraught with us humans. We have a very deep respect for the night that borders on fear, that may even equal fear. The darkness. And Lilith is a goddess of darkness. Before that, she was a goddess of earth, an ancient agricultural goddess. And nothing grew without her. And then in Judeo-Christian times, or Judaic times, really. She was the first woman of the Garden of Eden, the goddess who came in and embodied as Adam's first wife to keep that garden growing and going. And you've heard me tell the story many times of when Adam and God, the two guys in the Trinity there, said, Lilith, you've got to submit to us. She left. She said, I will not submit. I will not give up my divinity, my birthright. And so she took off. And God supposedly created a new woman out of Adam's rib that was subject to him, that was part of him, created out of him. They usurped in that creative energy, and they needed the feminine to do it, but they did it in such a way that she was submitted. So, here they are, Ceres, the goddess of grain, the goddess of Lammas. Here at Lammas time at Lunasa, Lammas is a word that means the mass of the loaf, and it's more associated with, it's very old and Celtic, I think, but it got co-opted into the church to be the where the church would honor this holiday. And Lunasa is the older language that directly relates to the god and goddess of the harvest. So that's the quick and dirty version of it. Ceres, the ancient Greek goddess of grain and food and nourishment, represents nourishment in all dimensions in astrology. So food, how we feed our bodies, how we nourish our souls, how we take care of ourselves, self-care, self-love, the great bywords of our contemporary times. Ceres has something to say about that. She gives us information, and she is merging that energy with Lilith, the divine feminine before patriarchy, Black Moon Lilith, that void of creation that becomes form, the one who creates, who gives birth over and over and over again. And so they are in a flow to Chariklo. Chariklo, I just read an article by Kelly Hunter about Chariklo recently, her newsletter. And Chariklo is Chiron's wife. She is a shapeshifter. She was born, created a water spirit, a naiad, or I think the water spirits. And when she fell in love with Chiron, she went through whatever metamorphosis that made her a centaur. And she became the healer who took care of Chiron, who is the wounded healer. He received a wound that would not heal, and somehow through these 900 years of pain and suffering, created healing, created medicine, taught the doctors and the healers, taught the heroes, is an initiator. Chiron guides us through an initiation path, one of the many initiation cycles that we naturally go through in our lives. And Chariklo is standing by. Now, Kelly Hunter talked about Chariklo as this incredibly high vibrational being who lifts. Last full moon, the full moon in Aquarius 2 weeks ago was exact conjunct Chariklo. The moon was conjunct Chariklo, which brought the vibration way up. And it was a kind of a crystalline vibration of air and breath. And now this moon has moved around and the sun has moved around. And they are in Leo at the Lion's Gate, which is another high vibration, but it's a conflagration. It is fire. And it's rather terrifying, if you ask me. Well, Karaklo is still sending her energy into that because she is in communication with Black Moon Lilith and Ceres. And she is, I see her as having water energy. I see her as working with herbalism, which actually herbs and plants adapt. They are adaptogens. They grab any of that energy. Some of them are for air, some are fire, some are water, some are earth, but they all come from earth. They all need soil in one way or another to grow. So that's happening. And then, what do we got? We got, well, the last one I'm going to talk about the other Lilith, Lilith Star, the divine, the demonized goddess, is still, she's been in a long trine to Pluto and Capricorn, merging her energies with that death and transformation. And honestly, this aspect, which has been pretty much for a year and will continue for another year or close to it, it's got patriarchy pissing its pants, if not shitting its pants. So, and for each of us, inside of us, this is all happening for us. This is the background of all of these moons and eclipses and other aspects that we talk about when we come on and do a special reading. This has been in the background. The Eris, Pluto square, and the Algol, much more recently, the Algol or Lilith Star trine to Pluto. So the divine feminine has patriarchy by the balls. Just know that. And, you know, I can cackle and get all excited about it, but you know what? I am a daughter of the patriarchy. There's nothing I can do about that. All of us are living in the structures, and it's pretty alarming and kind of shitty to think about how the structures will break and what that might cost us, especially since they won't go down easy and they don't care who they destroy. So this is what we're facing, folks. And so it is upon us to look at these new moons and these full moons and the lion's gates and the changes, all of the shifts in vibration that are happening. And many of us, we're attuned in different ways. We are this incredible symphony of attunement. And we're not all supposed to be the same. So we have to have some patience and forbearance with one another because we all play a role, and it may feel like this sometimes. I don't understand what you're talking about, therefore you must be wrong. Or you don't understand me, quit saying I'm wrong, I know I'm right. Well, we have to set that down and trust ourselves and trust that what is going on with our compatriots, our sisters and our brothers on the higher vibrational path, that it's all necessary and it's all working. And we do our part. The expression, stay in your lane. Well, this is a place for staying in your lane and making sure other people have space in their lane. And where can we collaborate? Sometimes we're called to collaborate with people that we don't necessarily 100% agree with. Either way, this is what's going on at the new moon at Lionsgate. If any of you are in Maine, I'm going to be at the beach in Lincolnville with a fire on Sunday evening. So come on around, say hi, bring a hot dog and a stick, and we'll, it's not going to be a heavy-duty ceremony, although we never know when we might break out into ceremony at any given moment. but it is a time for us to get together. So I hope you have something beautiful planned for yourself to honor the full moon and to let its waves, the full moon is actually happening on Sunday morning, so the sun will be up, and as you feel that sun beaming down on you, the moon is beaming down too, the dark side of the moon. So that's it. Hi Diana. Hi everybody. Thank you all for watching, and this will get saved and posted to YouTube, and by all means, feel free to share this for anybody that you think needs to hear it or that would appreciate what we've got to say here. Blessed new moon to you all, and I'm off.